Are you looking for the very best products to protect your digital privacy? Well, Silent Pocket has everything you need with their patented product line of high-quality Faraday bags, backpacks, clutches, and wallets. Visit silentpocket.com today and receive 10% off your order by using discount code SHAREDSECURITY. Welcome to episode 187 of the weekly Shared Security Show. And joining me this week is the Canadian powerhouse co-host, Scott Wright.
Hey, that's me. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, there's only one Canadian powerhouse. I guess that
You're
must
welcome.
be me. So, what?
That's right. And hey, speaking of being a Canadian, I actually have a few Canadian jokes
yeah,
for you.
okay. I hope you have some. Well, never mind. Go ahead.
Oh, these are great jokes, by the way. These might be called dad jokes, but so how do you keep Canadian bacon from curling in your frying pan, Scott?
Good question. I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know that one.
Well, you got to take away their little brooms.
Yes, I knew it had something to do with curling the sport,
right?
but
yeah,
it wasn't quick enough to. There, yeah, that's what I was hoping you'd have the sound effects.
Yeah. Yes. And of course that didn't go. Try that. There we go. Now you can see that. And it won't stop.
Amazing.
All right. Yeah. I still haven't figured that out, but okay, I got one more joke for you before we get into the news here. So what do you call a Canadian cartoon?
What do you call a Canadian cartoon? I don't know.
Anime.
Anime.
A.
Oh yeah, he's got a million of them, folks.
Yeah. Thank you. I'll be here for the rest of the podcast. So no more jokes. Yeah, no more jokes. So we're done with that. But so how you doing,
Not too bad,
Scott?
except I think I'm in Europe right now. My bandwidth is a little slow and choppy, but hopefully you can hear me, see me.
Well, maybe that's something they could work on with the Canadian infrastructure. Just improving.
Yeah, we got to get the squirrels running a little faster in the cages.
Yeah.
Actually, it's all because there's an election coming.
You guys
there's an election coming, and they're putting all of the bandwidth into the election because we have to do what you guys do in a year and a half in 20 days. Think about it.
I'm so sorry. Good luck with that. We'll be observing from afar.
It's okay. It'll be interesting, but not as intriguing as the U.S. elections. Obviously.
Yeah. No. No one in the world can compare to the U.S. election process.
Let's not get into too much politics. Yeah.
So, yeah, no, not on this show. Definitely not on this show. Kevin's not here anyway, so we can't. We can't have any.
I'm starting to think he doesn't like me. The last how many episodes we've had, and he and I have not been able to make it on the same show. So.
Yeah, well, we're going to get him next week because he had another conflict today. Automatic scheduling, those calendar.
It was the all day. It was the all day scheduling challenge, right? So like when your calendar says all day, but it only shows up as a little banner at the very top of the day. So
yeah. Those systems need a little bit of improvement, but nonetheless, we'll have Kevin back. But this week we wanted to cover a couple big stories that have been in the news, and the first being the massive T-Mobile breach that had happened here recently. It was 7.8 million T-Mobile customers have been affected by this.
And breach. Not the first time, I guess, right? For T-Mobile.
No, this is not. This is actually the sixth major data breach suffered by T-Mobile.
Not their first hacker rodeo.
The last 4 years. No, definitely not. So what's interesting about this one is that, they mentioned that they have their post-pay customers. So that's, customers that pay on a, monthly basis. They have a, it's almost like your subscription, right?
Yeah.
Type of payment system, right? And they said that there were no phone numbers,
no passwords,
account numbers, pins, and those things exposed. But for their prepay customers, they actually had account pins that were exposed for 850,000 customers. And that's actually a little bit more concerning because, as you know, with those account pins, that's what you have to give to like the customer service person that you call when you have a problem with your account, or say if you need to change your phone number to another phone. That's kind of the mechanism that prevents what we've talked about before in the show, SIM hijacking attacks. Which
and it's interesting. They said, well, we're forcing everybody to reset their pins, so that's cool, great, good job, right? What do you think people are going to set their pins to?
Yeah.
1, 2, or 3, the pin 4. They had before, right?
Hopefully. Yeah. So this is just in reading the articles, that T-Mobile, this is not their first rodeo, like you said. From what I read on Brian Krebs' website, said this actually came through a wireless network. Apparently, in one of their data centers was the culprit or the attack vector for this particular,
which is
attack.
Unfortunate because you need a wireless access point in a data center.
Yeah, and you don't hear too much anymore about wireless networks being attacked. This goes way back. I think some of the very first large credit card breaches back in the late 1990s and early 2000s were attributed to WEP networks, and I think Home Depot, or it was at Lowe's, I think may have been hacked that way many years ago. But you don't hear too much about wireless attacks.
So I mean, it's kind of the adoption curve. Once you get past the early majority, late majority, you get to the laggards, and eventually at some point, I guess the attackers kind of usually give up on things like Windows XP or whatever, right? The old technologies, but there's still a few that will try it. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. So we'll have those links in the show notes. I really definitely recommend reading the Brian Krebs article. He actually goes into who the attackers are. I love Brian Krebs, how he actually reaches out and finds the hackers, right? That are, and has like direct message conversations with them on Twitter and things like that.
What could go wrong?
You're Brian Krebs, of course. Absolutely. But I love that kind of.
There's one other thing. I mean, we haven't talked about these, some major data breaches as much as we used to, right? They were almost every week, in in past months of episodes. But it still bugs me, when these come up, that there's the talk about, okay, so those the legal obligations to say there's no evidence that any of this stuff has been abused, right? They have to say that, to to appease people. And then they offer 2 years of identity theft monitoring or something, right? Or credit monitoring. What are your thoughts, Tom, about how effective that is, or what's the point?
It's not effective at all, honestly. If you're doing all the things that you should be doing by monitoring your credit card statements and setting up fraud alerts and other things through I think even the major telecom companies have alerting systems built in for when your account is accessed and other types of things. It's kind of the de facto standard though for any type of data breach, that whenever they disclose this, they say, well, we're giving you the free credit monitoring and blah, blah, blah. And what I get concerned with is these companies that conduct these monitoring services have all of your sensitive data. When you sign up for these services, you have to give away a lot of sensitive data.
And are they not selling it to data brokers too? Isn't that how they stay in business?
They possibly could be, because again, read those privacy policies, terms of service, and other things like that, and you're absolutely right. They could be giving away some of that information to make.
So I don't want to dwell on it. Maybe we should make it a topic for a future episode. To go into the credit monitoring and that whole ecosystem.
Yeah. It's a whole other
But
world
the
for
one
sure.
last point
For
on this
sure.
one is, any of these major breaches that happen, it's a good time to realize that you should be watching out more carefully for phishing messages that come from that organization that's been hacked, right? Because the attackers are going to have email addresses most likely of all the customers, and they're going to
Oh
create
yeah.
some kind of pretext or phishing scam, or maybe even social engineering scam if they've got the phone numbers, right, that were affected. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. After every major data breach, that's the number one thing you need to be
Yep.
concerned about is
Yep.
phishing, for sure.
Cool.
Are you sick and tired of getting your credit card or debit card compromised? Well, it's happened to me in the past, and if it's happened to you, you know it's a time-consuming and stressful process to deal with. Look, credit or debit card breaches are happening all the time because there is very little protection out there to prevent your physical card number from falling into the wrong hands. Well, there's a great solution to this problem, and that's called a privacy card, which is a tool that masks your bank account information by generating virtual card numbers. So if your virtual card number gets compromised, your real card number won't. And on top of that, you can control all of those reoccurring online payments by deciding who can charge your card, how much, and how often. And the best part, you can pause or close out virtual card numbers at any time, which means you have total control over all of your online subscription and reoccurring payments. And right now, new privacy customers will get $5 to spend on your first purchase. So go to privacy.com/shared security right now to sign up and take back control of your online payments.
You want your organization to be secure and compliant and to have a healthy culture, but your employees' lack of awareness makes you vulnerable to data theft, fraud, and compliance penalties. It's frustrating that the boring, static training content that's being used today has failed to improve employees' ability to defend against cyber attacks. At ClickArmor, we know that without using gamification, it's extremely hard to get staff to understand how to avoid threats. Our gamified simulations and challenges have provided a 50% average improvement in thousands of employees' ability to spot phishing threats. Go to clickarmor.ca/shared security to get your free gamified phishing assessment for up to 500 employees. You'll see quickly how gamified simulations can help your team be more resilient and compliant and help avoid costly ransomware and fraud incidents. Let ClickArmor help you go from being an underappreciated, stressed out fall guy to being an innovative leader who's the catalyst for greater productivity in your organization.
All right. So I know you're not a user of Tinder,
Not that you know of,
Scott,
yeah.
but not that I know of. But yes, Tinder is now letting their users identify as well, basically show their identity to prove that they are who they say they are.
Yeah,
on the popular dating.
That's interesting. App. So what do you think is the message here by being sent by that? What does it do?
Well, there's a couple things. This is something we're starting to see more and more services offer because, as we've talked about, even in the last show, that, the internet wasn't built to have a great way to authenticate yourself and to show that you really are who you say you are. And I think dating apps like Tinder have a particular problem. And one topic I wanted to cover in this episode was what's called catfishing, which is a popular scam that, especially if you're on one of these dating apps, you may be a target of this. And what it means by being catfished is someone's created a fake persona, right? They're pretending to be somebody who they are not, and they're usually trying to scam you out of money, or it could be other types of things by developing a fake relationship with you. Unfortunately, a lot of elderly
Yes,
people
yeah.
fall for catfishing scams and
Yeah,
things like
actually,
that.
it reminds me. I remember the exact date. I wrote a blog post about this. It was Valentine's Day this year about dating app
Oh,
risks or vulnerabilities of that type, right? And I
mhm.
think there was a reference to a good article that I found
Yep.
in there too. So that's at the clickarmor.ca website on the blog.
And we'll link that in the
Great.
show notes too, for sure. But yeah, this is and I think that Tinder in particular has had a huge problem with catfishing and other scams, and so this is a way for them to hopefully start validating that. The other challenge with this though is that this type of system, and maybe some of our listeners have run into this, where you have to hold up your
Mhm.
ID next to you through your
Yeah, the
webcam,
registration process is a
and
little suspect.
it is, and you do have to give away some sensitive information about yourself, like
Mhm.
your ID, and other details, just depending on the system that they're using. And of course, I think there's probably some AI and algorithms
Yeah,
behind that to validate that, because to validate, millions of users
yeah,
manually is just, very
yep.
difficult. But we're starting to see more of that on the internet.
Yes, yeah,
So
the registration process itself could be flawed, right, or easily vulnerable to abuse.
yes, that's the other piece, is we just don't know, vulnerabilities in this particular, whatever
Hmm.
Tinder is using to do this could be exploited and manipulated to bypass that. So I don't think this is going to be the silver bullet to prevent
Yeah, yeah.
catfishing, but I do think it's
It's
an
kind of.
important
I
first
was a
step.
bit confused by the whole process and the use case implications, because it seemed to me like they're saying it's voluntary. You can verify yourself, but wouldn't it be better if you were actually a user? You would like to see that the people you're going to be talking to are verified, right? And so they don't talk
Yeah.
about if there's any kind of filtering system that says only show me people that are verified, or
Ah,
to make it mandatory, right? Like I'm not sure if it's still the same, but
right.
Facebook at one point really upped their game in authentication, right? Where you had to do a lot more
Mhm.
to prove who you are. They didn't want fake, people's names and IDs. I can't remember if they're still. I
Yeah.
rarely use it anymore, but there was that sort of a sense that they were getting serious about making sure that people are who they say they are at the beginning, rather than making it voluntary and then putting the onus on the people who are doing the scanning to decide who they should trust.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. And I think from the article I read here, they keep it optional and voluntary because there's identity laws,
Mm,
basically, depending on the country and the jurisdiction that Tinder is operating in. It just varies
yeah.
across the
I
board.
still think it would be a good idea for
With
them to
like,
have a
what
filter
they
that
can
says
and
only
can't
show
do.
me people that are verified.
Yeah, well, maybe one of our listeners that is on Tinder
Yeah,
could let us know if that's the case. I'm not on Tinder and Scott isn't, so uh, we won't be going on there to check.
true.
Um, so yes, but so
Yeah.
Scott, do you still have a magnetic stripe
I
on
got
your
magnetic
credit
stripes
cards?
everywhere. Well, I mean,
Do you? Well, you're just old
in
school
Canada,
like
yeah,
that,
we
right?
do that. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
magnetic stripes. That's what makes a credit card, isn't it?
It has for, I mean, since the 1970s. This actually, if you look at credit card history, the magnetic stripe was used to replace the old way of they put your card in a machine and they have carbon copy paper, and then they slam
Yeah.
this thing down on the desk, and it imprints the
But that's
card
probably still
number
why we
on a
have the
piece of paper.
embossed numbers. I mean, you could probably still use one of those
Yes.
apparatus.
Hmm. Yep. Even though that's being phased out as well. Like the credit card I have now doesn't
Oh, is
have
that right?
the
Okay,
embossed
nice.
letters anymore. Yeah. Yeah. That's starting to be phased out. But the whole point of this conversation is that Mastercard has finally announced that they are phasing out magnetic stripes on cards. starting in 2024. Unfortunately, the official transition won't start until 2029 when they won't have any new cards issued with them. And then they say by 2033, gosh, that seems
We'll be dead by
so
then.
long from now. I know that there will be no more magnetic stripes ever.
Well, I mean, you got to give them some lead time,
So-
I guess. Really?
Yes, we have.
I mean,
while.
I don't think I've seen a reader that doesn't accept a chip card, in the last few years.
Yeah, the chip card usage has gotten better. We have, I know here in the U.S., gas stations just more recently, probably in the last
they grab your
year or
card
so,
and you stick it in.
Yeah, but before, and we talked about this on the show too, that gas stations actually were some of the last companies to actually implement chip cards because of the cost of putting a chip reader in every single gas pump across all their locations is a huge, enormous expense, and so they waited literally to the last minute by I think.
What will that do
PCI
to card
regulations and
skimming?
other
I guess
things.
it'll help a lot.
No?
No?
Not necessarily. And I've been following the card skimming topic for quite a while. And while we've gotten rid of the swiping mechanisms, the new card skimmers that are out there are actually really ingenious. They will actually interface. They actually have a layer in between the chip and your card, and interface the transaction of that chip, either wirelessly or through another skimming mechanism. So they found ways around that where you don't have to use a magnetic stripe anymore. They're still siphoning
that's good.
off,
Brian Krebs will still have things to write about then.
Credit card data. Oh yeah, and that's actually one a good resource.
He writes
he's
lots
got
about
tons
skimming.
of great research actually showing pictures of skimmers and how they work, and all kinds of cool stuff. So we'll show that in our show notes as well. But yeah, they're still finding ways around the magnetic stripe. I don't think it's as prevalent anymore, and I think attacks are still easier to do in these card not present situations, online where you're putting your card number in. There's no mechanism yet that, at least that's not easily accessible, unless you're using something like Apple Pay. Like
I think that's probably going to take a larger chunk of the market. It's certainly,
and it is
interesting. I think just a little story. So I had a credit card a call from my bank saying my card was compromised a few weeks ago. So they're going to send me a new card, and they disabled, it was my personal card. So I'm going, oh, great, I got to go through this again, and you got to go back. There really should be a better way. This is my call to all the financial industries out there, right? That when a card gets breached, it doesn't impact all of your prepaid accounts, right, that are tied to that card. And I went online for an hour looking for one-time card things. I think PayPal used to do it, and they might do it in the States, but we don't get it in Canada, where they can give you a one-time card number that you can use with a merchant, and it will only be used by that merchant, but it's tied to your main card account, which is brilliant. And that's kind of what Apple Pay does, I think, too, right? I mean, it uses a one-time encoded thing to work with your card. So, but it sort of illustrated it to me, because I went and I tried to, I'd forgotten that it was disabled. I tried to use my card at a parking lot, and it was denied. And I thought, oh, shoot, the card's dead. And then I said, well, it accepts Apple Pay, so I'm going to do Apple Pay. So I did Apple Pay, and then I realized the Apple Pay is going on the same card, but it worked. And so it was not tied to the compromised card. So that's pretty cool.
Yep. That is cool. Well, I do have a solution for you, Scott. And this is a good shout out to one of our sponsors, privacy.com. Who actually does create virtual numbers for...
I think I read about that when I was doing the research, but I have a feeling they aren't available in Canada, or maybe there was some other reason that it didn't work for me, but I'll look at it again and see.
You should check that out. Maybe it is available in Canada now. I'm using it and I love it. So, and actually, just a shout out to them. Since you listen to this podcast, if you're interested in that, you can go to privacy.com/shared security, and they'll actually give you $5.
Well, that's awesome. I'll save $5.
So it's like a $3. That's right.
This was
right. I don't know if that's
this
Canadian
was really
or US,
not a planned plug, other than the fact that we had a sponsorship to deal with. But no, it's nice when a sponsor comes up naturally, right?
Yep, but I had no choice. I had to mention that now. All right. Well, I think that's all we have time for this week's
thanks
episode.
Everybody for joining us.
I want to thank you, Scott.
And one piece of note:
thanks for coming on.
We got named as one of the top 6 podcasts, a security podcast. Did we not? Again, recently.
We're on it's one of those lists. I don't know. It's another tech company mentioned us. We've had actually a few of them in the last week or so. So much appreciated. It's quite an honor to be on all these different lists of popular cybersecurity podcasts. Much appreciated. It's pretty cool.
For sure. So with that, I think
that's all. So we will talk to everyone next week. That's all for this week's show. Be sure to follow the Shared Security Show on Twitter and Instagram for the latest news and show updates. If you like this episode, please hit that like and subscribe button, and please subscribe to us on your favorite podcast listening app. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week for another episode of the Shared Security Show.